So, fingerprint classification. Fingerprint classification composed of key, the major division, primary classification, secondary classification, sub-secondary classification, and the final classification. So, before we proceed to the fingerprint classification, we must memorize or familiarize the symbols of fingerprint classification, which is A as plain arc, T as tented arc, R as radial loop, U as ulnar loop, W as plane whirl, C as central pocket loop whirl, D as double loop whirl, and lastly is the X, which is accidental loop whirl. So in fingerprint classification, fingers are assigned in accordance to the number, which is finger number 1, the right thumb, finger number 2, the right index, finger number 3, the right middle, finger number 4, the right ring, the finger number 5 is the right little, finger number 6, the left thumb, finger number 7 is the left index, finger number 8 is the left middle, finger number 9, the left ring, and finger number 10 is the left little. So first, in fingerprint classification, we first to classified is the primary classification. It is the summing up or adding all the numerical value of the whirl type pattern and its composites. So in primary classification, it is the addition, the sum of all numerical value of the fingers. When the if whirl type are appear in that fingers, and also the composites of whirl pattern, which are the plain whirl, central pocket loop whirl, double loop whirl, and the accidental loop whirl. Some other patterns that will appear in the fingerprint are disregarded. So if arc and loop appear in that pattern, so it will not be hindi siya kasali sa pag-add ng mga numerical value. So only those whirl pattern are considered in primary classification, and the composites also of whirl pattern. So right thumb and right index or one finger number 1 and 2 has a numerical value of 16. Right middle and right ring or the finger number 3 and 4 has a numerical value of 8. Finger number 5, which is the right little, and the left thumb has a numerical value of 4, and the finger number 7 and 8, which is the left index and left ring, left middle has a numerical value of 2, and lastly is the finger number 9 and 10 has a numerical value of 1. So if whirl pattern and the composites of whirl pattern are appeared in this finger, every assigned numerical value are sum up. Ia-add lahat ng mga numerical value if ang finger na to ay whirl pattern and the composites also. In primary classification, even fingers or fingers number 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 are the numerators. So even fingers are the numerator in primary classification, while the odd also are the denominator. In obtaining the primary classification, numerical value of all whirl patterns of the even fingers, if any, will be added plus 1, and the total of which will be the numerator of the primary, while the numerical of the whirl of odd fingers, if any, are likewise added plus 1 also, and the total of which will become the denominator for the primary. So in primary classification, the sum of numerator or the even fingers of numerical value are added plus 1 as well as the denominator. In primary classification, constantly added plus 1. So, primary classification is placed just to the right of the major division and left of the secondary classification. So, primary classification is placed to the right side of the major division and to the left side of the secondary classification. So next is the secondary classification. Fingers that appear in the right hand will become the numerator, while fingers that appear in the opposite hand will be the denominator. So in secondary classification, the right hand will be the numerator and the left hand will be the denominator. So it's kabaliktaran siya ng iba siya sa primary classification. For the purpose of obtaining this classification, secondary classification is divided into two groups. Secondary classification is divided into two groups, which are the secondary capital letter group and the secondary small letter group. So, next, the group, one of the group of secondary classification is the secondary capital letter group. It is obtained by writing the symbol of the pattern that appeared in the right and left indexed, or the fingers number 2 and fingers number 7. So in secondary capital letter group, only these two fingers, the right and the left index fingers, are included in secondary capital letter group. Only the symbol of the pattern, the index, will be brought up to the classification formula. So only the patterns of these both index fingers are brought to the classification formula. So only these two fingers. There are 5 basic type of patterns which can appear, which is plain arc, tented arc, radial loop, ulnar loop, and whirl. All composites of whirl shall always be represented by a symbol W. So those are the pattern that must be brought up to the classification formula. If those patterns appear in every of these fingers or the index fingers, those patterns are brought to the classification formula using the classification symbols, those pattern symbols, and all the composites of whirl must be put W or whirl. All composites of whirl pattern symbolized as W. Right index will be the numerator. So in secondary capital group, the right index will be the numerator and the left index will be the denominator. Next is the secondary small letter group. Fingerprints with plain arc, tented arc, and radial loop in any finger except index fingers constitute the secondary small letter group. So in secondary small letter group, the plain arc, tented arc, and radial loop are only patterns that must be brought to the classification formula of in all fingers except the index fingers. So in secondary capital letter group, only the both index, while the secondary small letter group, all fingers except the index. So it means the finger number 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. Those fingers are included in secondary small letter group. If plain arc, tented arc, and radial loop will appear in any of those, the symbol of this pattern in small letter will be brought up to the classification formula. So if the pattern of plain arc, tented arc, and radial loop appear in any of fingers of those fingers except the index, it will be brought to the classification formula in with the symbol using the symbol of those pattern in a small letter. If none of those pattern will appear, a dash will be used to indicate the absence of such pattern. So if wala dun sa tatlong pattern, the plain arc, tented arc, and radial loop appear on fingers except the index, we put dash in order to indicate that those patterns, those three patterns are absent in that fingers. So secondary classification is placed just to the right of the primary classification. So secondary classification placed to the right side of primary classification. Next is the sub-secondary classification. This classification concerned only with the index, middle, and ring fingers of both hands. So in sub-secondary classification, it's only concerned with the right index, right middle, right ring, left index, left middle, and the left ring. So those are the only fingers. Those fingers are only concerned in sub-secondary classification. Just like in secondary classification, right finger will be the numerator and the left is the denominator. So it's kaparehas ng sa secondary classification, the right hand will be the numerator and the left will be the denominator. In this classification, only loops and whirls are considered. So in sub-secondary classification, only loops and whirls are considered. So in order to obtain this classification, the fingerprint classifier must contain the ridge count of the loops and the ridge tracing of the whirls appearing on the above mentioned fingers. So the so if loop patterns are appear on these fingers fingers, ridge tracing is a must. And while if whirl pattern is appear, whirl tracing is needed also in above mentioned fingers, which is here. Whatever the ridge count, it shall then be referred to the formula assigned to each finger, the symbol capital I or capital O. Representing the ridge count will then be brought to the classification formula. So if the pattern appear on the fingers, I and O must be brought to the classification formula, which is I represent as inner, O as outer. So finger number 2, which is the right index, if the ridge count of the loop pattern of the index is 1 up to 9 is inner, while if 10 or more ridge count appear, it must be outer. So O, capital letter O for outer and capital letter I for inner, as well as the finger number 7. 1, 9 is inner, while 10 or more is outer. Next is the finger number 3, which is the right middle. So if the ridge count of the loop pattern is 1 up to 10, it is inner. Capital letter I as inner. So if 11 or more ridge count, it will be outer, as well as the finger number 8, which is the left middle. When finger number 4, which is the right ring, it is inner or I if if the ridge count is 1 up to 13. If outer also, if the ridge count will be 14 or more, as well as the finger number 1, which is the left ring. If whirl pattern appear on these fingers, whirl tracing will apply to determine whether it is an inner, outer, or knitting whirl. So if whirl pattern appear only I, M, O symbols, we will be brought to the classification formula. If the whirl tracing is an inner, we put it as I, and if it is knitting whirl, we put as M and O as outer. If those pattern appears as a whirl. So subsecondary classification is placed just right to the secondary classification. Next is the major division. It concerned only with the thumb of both fingers, which are the finger number 1 and finger number 6. So only in major division, only finger number 1, which is the right thumb, and finger number 6, which is the left thumb. The right thumb is the numerator, while the left thumb is the denominator. So the numerator will be the right thumb, and the denominator will the left thumb. Just like in subsecondary classification, ridge counting and whirl tracing will apply, and it concerned only with loops and whirl type of patterns. So in major division, loop and whirl type of patterns are only considered, and ridge counting and whirl tracing are considered also. So at this time, ridge count of the loops will be represented as S, M, and L. So it is small, medium, and large. The right thumb has two formulas, either the formulas depending on the ridge count of the left thumb. So when the ridge count of the left thumb is 16 or less, if the ridge count of this finger pattern is 16 or less, formula number 1 will be used, and when the ridge count of the left is 17 or more, ridge count number 2, formula number 2 will be used. So in case that the pattern appearing in the left thumb is non-loop, number 1 will be used. Formula number 1. If in case that the left thumb is a non-loop, formula number 1 will be automatically used. The formula of the left hand is fixed as shown in the table below. So it is the formula for the left thumb. So therefore, when loop appears on both thumbs, there is a need to look into the ridge count of the left thumb before proceeding to the right thumb, since the left thumb will serve as the basis for knowing which formula to be used for the right thumb. So before we proceed to the formula, we must look to the ridge count of the left thumb before we proceed to where we choose formula for the right thumb. So addition, if worst types of pattern are traced and the symbol of the tracing IMO will be brought up to the classification formula. So if whirl types also appear, IMO or inner, meeting, or outer will be brought up to the classification formula if whirl types patterns appear. So major deviation placed at the left of the primary classification. So next is the key classification. Key classification obtained by counting the ridge count of the first loop appearing on the fingerprint card starting from the right thumb down to the last fingers of the left hand with the exception of the little fingers. So, key classification, it is the ridge count of the first loop appearing from 1 up to 9. 1 up to 9 because finger number 10 and 1 ay 5 and 10 are exemption in key classification. So these fingers are only needed if first loop appearing. So the ridge count of those of the first loop pattern is the key classification. The key, no matter where found, is always placed at the numerator or above the classification line. So key classification is always placed to the numerator or the upper side of the classification line. So key classification is placed at the extreme left of the classification formula or to the left of the major division. Lastly is the final classification. The final classification is obtained from the little fingers 5 and 10. So in final classification, only concerned are the finger number 5 and finger number 10. The ridge count of the loop will be brought up to the classification formula and will be placed at the extreme left of the formula. So the ridge count also like in pagkapareha sa key classification. In final classification, ridge count of the loop also will be brought to the classification formula. So only one finger is necessary in the classification formula. If both little finger number 5 and 10 are loops, right little finger or finger number 5 has a priority. So, however, if the loop pattern is found only on the left finger, then such ridge count will be the final classification. So, if loop pattern appear on the finger number 5, finger number 5 will be brought to the classification formula. If both has a loop, the left little finger, then such a ridge count will be the final classification. If the final classification is from the right hand, it must be placed above the classification line or to the numerator side. So if in final classification, if the ridge count is from the right hand, it will be put on the numerator side or the upper side of the classification line. If it is from the left hand, it must be placed at the denominator side. If both fingers have no loop, the whirl will be considered. It is only during this time the ridge counting for whirl will apply and not tracing. So if walang loop no loop appear on both fingers, whirl tracing or whirl counting is applied and not tracing. So whirl tracing, whirl counting of whirl. Ridge of whirl will be counted from delta to the core. If whirl pattern appear on both fingers, it will be ridge counted in whirl. So it is delta to the core. Whirl patterns comprises at least 2 delta. So in whirl pattern comprises 2 deltas. Whirl on the right little finger is ridge count from the left delta towards the core. So if the whirl on the right little finger, the ridge count will be the left delta, left left delta to the core. If the ridge count from the if while whirl on the left little finger is ridge count from the right delta towards the core. So it is the vice versa between right little and left little fingers. A whirl on the right little fingers eliminates the need to ridge count on the left little finger. So if right little fingers only if both fingers is whirl, so only the uh ridge counting of whirl are only is only the right little is only in use is only brought to the classification formula. So the left little is eliminates. When a loop and whirl occur, a loop is given a priority. So if loop and whirl appear, so loop is a given priority between whirl and loop. So loop is if the pattern found in both fingers number 5 and 10 are arcs, there is no final classification. So if there no found if only pattern of arcs appear in both little fingers, there is no final classification. So only patterns of loop and whirl are considered in final classification. So final classification will be placed at the extreme left of the formula. So that's all. Thank you and God bless.